So as I said in my first ever community poll, if I had a nickel for every time someone asked me if this channel I was using AI to make these videos, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, given that all of the decisions I've made in terms of how I've especially changed the channel since January have been in the direction of doing things that I know for a fact AI can't do. However, the reason I've become more productive, and so one of the people who asked this question was actually nice enough to answer, why do you think this is AI? And he said, well, you did 4 videos all of last year, and then suddenly you're putting out daily videos and also almost daily blog posts. And they're long blog posts, which by my standards, they're actually short, and that's an interesting point. But by his standards, they're long, and they do take me about an hour or two to write. And so the interesting thing is that increase in productivity actually is related to AI and it's a reaction to AI slop. So I wanted to talk about that a bit, and I'm going to have future videos about how I've suddenly gotten so much more productive, which is ultimately synthesizing a lot of things that I already read but didn't really understand how to apply. However, I wanted to talk about the AI slop thing because that was the final piece of the puzzle, the final thing that actually got me to do what I needed to master productivity. And there are sort of 3 components of this, 3 related things that eventually it sort of clicked for me. And so the first of those is with my own channel. So both this channel and the Animal Arts and Crafts channel, I've had the idea since 2019, but I was struggling to figure out how to do a good production pipeline that wasn't going to burn me out. And so I didn't ever actually make any videos for either channel until after I got laid off. And then even when I got laid off, I put the Animal Arts and Crafts channel on hold to focus on this one, which is more relevant to what I'm trying to do. And then because I wanted to work at Navica, a company in San Antonio that has a talent pipeline hiring method, I think it's called, where it's basically, hey, you think you'd be a good fit, send us an email. And they're like, hey, could I come out to San Antonio to talk to your people, see if there are problems I could solve? And so I wanted to make those videos as sort of a portfolio for that. So I made 3 of those. They took me dramatically longer even than the sort of scripted video essays that I was doing. And I was always convinced that channel was going to be the one that was better for YouTube's algorithm. And it sort of was in that those videos got more views, but they had terrible retention and terrible conversion to subscribers compared to this channel. And when I looked at where YouTube was recommending these videos from, the people who were clicking were the people who were watching very obvious animal AI slop videos, like fake animal rescue content. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can see how YouTube might think, or the people clicking might think that I'm doing AI slop in these videos potentially, and then being disappointed when it's not. But also, like, I know who the audience for these videos are, which they're going to be close to the people who watch channels like Mothlight Media or Benji Thomas, and yet it's not recommending them to those people. And if I'd kept making videos, it might have. But again, that was on hiatus anyways, and certainly with this production pipeline, it wasn't feasible. So I'm like, okay, that is kind of frustrating, because if I had managed to do this 2 years ago, there would not be AI slop animal videos. There would still be fake animal rescue videos, and I still might have this issue. But it would probably be more likely that the initial people clicking would be from channels actually relevant, who had an actual interest in what I was saying, as opposed to people who were expecting AI slop content. And so there was that. That was the first thing. And then the second thing was, one thing that's relevant to understand here is I am sort of what Musa Al-Gharbi would call a symbolic capitalist, and there's a video, I'll explain that a little bit tomorrow, I have coming out, but also not really. And I don't share a lot of the values symbolic capitalists do. And I also, one thing is, my whole life I've sort of gone around believing that the people who become symbolic capitalists, I'm no smarter than they are, but they are a lot more conscientious than I am. And what I only very recently have realized is that I am actually probably more conscientious than they are, except in one specific area, which is when someone else wants you to implement their vision, but doesn't want to actually give you a lot of detail on how to do it, because it would be common sense for neurotypical people. And since that is a big part of what symbolic professions do in the real world, I am really bad at that. But it's not conscientiousness. There's a little bit of a lack of motivation when it's someone else's vision, but mostly it's just the autism of not getting the clarity, because I can be more productive on other people's projects than most people when I have someone I'm working with who is actually willing to answer my questions and articulate what they're trying to do until I understand it, and help me also figure out how to get started if I'm not clear on that. But the point is, I was trying to be more like these people, the actual creative professionals. So I was thinking, okay, I have nothing they don't, but they have conscientiousness that I don't. And then what I was seeing is these people who were making a living as professional YouTubers, a lot of them were former journalists and others were just influencers, but their video essayists were complaining that they were being outcompeted by AI slop, presumably trained on their own works, and people were confusing them for AI slop. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, I guess the good thing for me is I never have to worry about being confused for AI slop, which I'm wrong apparently on that, but it's still, I'm probably one of the last humans most people would, because I am so different. The things I do are so different from what AI does. Although there are superficial similarities that the person who responded to my comment, and again, thank you, pointed out that I realized someone who doesn't know AI very well might actually not be able to tell the difference. However, so I'm looking at these people who are complaining, okay, I'm being outcompeted by AI slop. I'm like, okay, I don't have that issue. My issue is always, and so this is actually, so G.K. Chesterton in his essay on Rudyard Kipling in his collection Heretics, which I have, but I'm not going to pull because I didn't do that. He talks about how Rudyard Kipling is basically, he had the capacity to be a great poet, but he was always trying to be a mediocre poet. And I'd like, that sort of describes where I have been, is I have the capacity to do the things that the people, most of the symbolic professionals think they're doing, are trying to do, but actually can't. But I've been convinced that I can't because I've been operating by their standards. And there have been a few things that have helped me escape that trap. And I'll talk about that in future videos. But I was like, oh, I can pretty clearly, I can make content that AI cannot replicate, whereas AI is pretty good at replicating, and it still can't replicate everything, especially not actually getting its facts right, but that doesn't really matter. And then the final thing was, YouTube doesn't push AI slop channels too hard when I don't click, but they still keep testing them on me. And there were 2 channels in a period of like a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, where I watched a video and a half before I realized, I think this is AI content. And one of them had a human reading it, I'm pretty sure. The other one was completely AI. But it took me, because they had all the AI pattern hallmarks, but because a lot of these types of explainer videos match that pretty well, it wasn't until I realized that it was the exact same AI pattern across 2 videos on these channels that when they were topics that a human doing this organically would have different approaches, that I'm like, oh, this looks like an AI channel. And then I look and I'm like, yep. I'm like, okay, so now it's even fooling me. And so then I started like, I'm not going to click on new channels unless there's a very strong sign that there's a human behind it. And then I realized, oh, a lot of the things I've been trying to do in my production process to be more like what Musa Al-Gharbi calls symbolic capitalists, and I think I would be one by his standards, but I don't have a lot of their same values, and particularly as an autistic person, I don't have the cultural capital that they have. And but I can do things that they cannot, that I haven't been appreciating until now. And so I'm like, oh, I should, like, I've talked about this idea before, little bets, small bets, that I was still overestimating how much to do, because I have perfectionism, because I've been hung up on the standards of how symbolic capitalists do these things. And so it's interesting. So the viewer who asked if I was AI and then actually responded why he thought that, or she thought that, said, well, couple things. It's, first of all, again, you went from 4 videos last year to daily videos, long Substack essays. Secondly, you are not going into a lot of details, like you're just getting the essence of things. And I will point out that with AI content, typically they actually are going into details. The details just aren't accurate. But I actually do think more like LLMs, I think, than most neurotypical people do. And that is actually, I've talked about, like, my thinking is upside down and outside in compared to most people. And so my thinking is still closer to a neurotypical person than an LLM, but it's more in the LLM direction than a neurotypical person. And so I was like, I'm trying to imitate the way that symbolic capitalists sort of, and not fully, like there were things like, again, I'm not going to cite every page number on a video essay. I think unless you're making an income from it enough to hire someone to do it for you, that's an unrealistic expectation. Academia does that, but I don't think that's good in academia either, and I'll have videos on that. And so I'm like, I'm going to cut out all of the stuff that is making me like, and I didn't have the term of symbolic capitalist at the time, and so I was going with the less friendly term for a subset of symbolic capitalists, the midwit, but I'm like, I'm going to try to be less midwit in my videos, just cut out all the stuff where I'm trying to be more like these people. And so I started doing that because I'm like, I'm just going to focus on the things that I know I understand well, that people have expressed at least some interest in when I've talked about them, and I'm just going to do a lot of it and not worry about the kind of fine-tuning and like getting things perfect that professional symbolic capitalists actually do. And so that ended up, so those three things. So the realizing, oh, like first the frustration with, the videos that take the most effort are the ones that YouTube thinks are most like AI slop of my videos, and then recommends them, or the people who click are people who watch AI slop, because the algorithm is ultimately people clicking. So the people who see my highest effort videos in the Animal Arts and Crafts channel, the ones that take the most time and energy to do, and who actually click, are the ones watching AI slop content. And probably there's a lot more people watching AI slop fake animal rescue videos than watching Ben Thomas or Mothlight Media. But it's like, okay, it's going to take a while to get there, and that is frustrating. And then the next thing was these symbolic capitalists who are successful professionally on YouTube are like, oh, it's getting harder because the AI can imitate what we do. And then I fell for, at least for a video and a half, on 2 channels of that myself, and I started avoiding channels that didn't have a sign of being a human. I'm like, wait, I've been trying to make myself more like these people, these symbolic capitalists, when my approach is the opposite, and that is my strength. I'm basically doing what Chesterton described of Kipling, where I'm trying to conform to the standards of people who pretend to be what I am capable of doing, and I just need to go with the things that I know about and that I've already thought about a lot and just not put a lot of effort into them. And there's other things too. Like, one thing is, every video that I do, I need to be able to record in one sitting. And sometimes you'll see me add one, but that's in the next session. I'm typically recording 2 to 3 videos, occasionally 4 in one sitting. Then I'm editing videos in batches of 2 to 4. And then I'm typically writing each essay as a standalone thing, and I'm not stopping until I'm done. And so I mentioned, actually, most of my blog posts have historically been much longer because I was trying to cover, like, all the angles that most people don't care about, and it made it hard for me to finish and tie it all up. And so even if my essays, some of them being, like, as long as 300... I have a couple essays, like one that was the script for this channel is, like, 7,000, I think. But most of my posts are between 1,000 and 3,000 words, which to me isn't that long. That is short for me. Like, most of my older essays that I would write were more towards 10,000 words. So that is getting shorter, but it's shorter and I can write it in a thing. But it was seeing, oh, the fact AI can't do the things I do gave me the confidence to do that. And so this commenter, another thing that they, as I said, they said, so you're prolific, you are just getting the gist of things, and instead of going into details like most booktubers and video essayists do, which is the point of the channel, and it was the point even with the video essay type things, although I was still scripting them, but it's even more the point of it now. And also, because the other thing is, I worked, like, I was involved on early, like, AI at my last job, but I was, so first of all, I was one of the people looking at all these proposals and saying, hey, you can do this with, like, a model that we developed 30 years ago for a lot cheaper, right? And I was the one, when people were proposing big AI projects, like, saying, pushing back and saying, wait, do we really need AI for this? Like, is it going to actually save money as opposed to having a human do it? And I didn't really realize I was adding anything to those projects until I was getting laid off, and people who'd worked with me on them were like, oh, hey, you should be an AI consultant. The AI world needs you because we need more people who approach things like you are. So while I worked in AI and I'm trying to sell myself as an AI consultant to some degree, I'm selling myself on the stuff that I know that is not AI, because I can ask the right questions to figure out, like, the details very quickly. And I've played a lot with AI to understand what it can do, but that also, I understand its limitations very well, and I don't use it for very many things unless I have basically a way to check, verify what it's actually going to do. And I'm not morally opposed to using AI, but my understanding of how it works, like, the things that I would be willing to use it for, it is not capable of doing now, and it will not be capable of doing until there is a paradigm shift in AI research, until it's not based on these models that are basically based on stuff that's 50 years old, which is, if you see my video on the New Year's resolution, I talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think I could do that if I got, like, a VC to give me money, but the companies, they're not doing that right now, and until that happens, the nature of how these models are designed, they could not do the things that I would be willing to use AI for. So I'm not morally opposed, but it would still be, like, the critical thing is, like, it would be the editing, the implementation stuff that I don't like. So, like, one thing I do with these videos is I have a tendency to, like, pause at weird places trying to catch my train of thought. And that annoys me to listen to, and I figure if it annoys me, it annoys other people. So 3/4 of my editing is just cutting out the pauses, listening to the video several times and cutting out the pauses where I'm like, this sounds wrong to me. And if I could get an AI that would do that without changing everything else in the video unacceptably, I would use it. And an AI that could do it could also smooth the gap so there's not an abrupt cut as well. But right now, the way AI works, as far as I know, it's not possible to have it actually do that. And I know there are some companies trying to work on that. But anyways, the point is, yeah, I don't use AI. I'm also not strictly opposed to it. It just can't do the things that I am trying to do. Oh, and that's another thing, a fourth thing actually, is so because of the experiments I've done with Copilot, like the conclusions I come to, like if I feed Copilot all the facts that have sort of I can think of explicitly that have led me to a train of thought, it can approximate where I'm going about 25% of the time, but that's after I'm already giving it all those facts. So it's still missing it about 75% of the time. And if I really explain what I'm thinking, I can get it to parrot back to me what I said in a comprehensible way about 80% of the time. But that still means 1/5 of the time, these things that I've come to, it can't even parrot back to me. It can't even get that right. And so the reason I use it for that is, have you ever, like, you say something and then someone says it back to you and it's like, oh, that actually sounds stupid when you say it. So that's why I will run my thoughts. But it's usually not for the stuff in this video. It's usually in terms of how I'm approaching process stuff. But it was, again, seeing and realizing, oh, the things that I do are the things that AI can't do and is unlikely to do anytime soon. And that is actually part of my unfair advantage, is that I can do these things. And yeah, I guess some of them do apparently look AI-ish, like the speed of which I'm doing things. But people have been even more productive than me, like, well, before AI. And the generalizations thing, like the AI model generalizes, but then it confabulates and creates details in its responses generally, which I am generally not doing. I might say, I think I remember this or that, but I'm telling you if I don't remember it for sure. And then the other thing is, so the rule of 3 thing, which is another thing this person brought up. Yeah, that's a normal human thing. It's common. People using rule of 3 doesn't tell you anything. What tells you things is if you see that someone is using rule of 3 exclusively, like they're not using lists of other numbers, that is a pretty strong indicator in conjunction with other factors that it might be AI. So yeah, when I was coming up with this idea, I didn't think I'd have to explain, no, I am not using AI for this video, but I can see why someone who isn't that familiar with what AI can do might actually think that. And so again, thank you for this commenter, this viewer, for explaining that. But it was a reaction to AI slop that did basically set me free, let me be a lot more productive by cutting out the stuff that I was trying to do, where it was basically trying to be like the professional symbolic capitalists, which is not my strength. And I realized, reading this book especially, I realized, oh, a lot of these people are pretending to be able to do what I actually can do. And that is, well, I might as well do it. And it's gonna, some people, they're not gonna understand what I'm doing, but the ones who understand, like, those are the ones who matter, right? Like, it doesn't matter if 95% of people look at what I'm doing and think, okay, I'm an idiot. What matters is that the 5% of people who get what I'm doing, they're like, oh, this is actually useful to me. So yeah, I wanted to explain that quickly because I will have a series of videos I want to make on how I figured out how to improve my production process, because this took me way too long to figure out, despite getting good advice, actually figuring out how to implement it. And so I'll have future videos on that, but I wanted to explain that the thing that made it all click was reaction to AI slop and realizing that, oh, my strength is that in AI slop cannot do what I do, even if in some respects it may look superficially similar. But even if, again, 95% of people mistake what I'm doing for AI slop, as long as 5% of people who watch understand what I'm doing that AI slop can't do it, then it doesn't really matter. And okay, well, Zorro is saying he wants to sit on my head, which I think it's time to go. So thanks for watching. I'm Magpie. This fellow on my head is Zorro. And I'll see y'all in the next one.